While selecting your RAM might be a bit complicated, actually installing it tends to be a rather easy process so long as you make sure you're putting it in the correct slots. This is the Project 7 series where I go into long-form, detailed conversations about how to build your own gaming PC, or how to update one that you already have. If you're interested in gaming performance content like this, go ahead and click that like button. And while you're at it, maybe even subscribing. So this right here is a SODIMM. This has come out of a laptop. I know that this is pretty much never going to be used, so I'm not going to exactly handle this. There we go, in the most appropriate way. But that's okay, because that's going to help inform you of basically what not to do. On here, you're going to see a series of gold, what I would call almost teeth. They are pins, but they are pins that are basically at the very edge of the PCB. These pins slide down into the motherboard to make contact with pins inside of there so that all of the electrical energy can flow between the two devices. Now, when you install RAM, you will note that there is a little divot. There's always a little divot like that. That divot is going to go toward the bottom of the case, and another way to tell is the fancy logo or any kind of extra treatment that the RAM has on it. Like I will show you with this G-Skill here in just a moment. That tends to always face outwards because they want people to see all of the fancy stuff that they've put onto their RAM DIMMs in order to promote their brand. So that's another way that you can tell the direction that these things are supposed to face. Now, sometimes RAM will look like this. This is just a raw PCB with the chips and the surface mounted devices that you can see exposed. Other times you'll have a heatsink on here, and those can be various heights and various widths to some degree, right? You still have a pretty much a standard slot spacing that they have to fall within. You can also have RGBs that tend to stick on the top, which can make this taller and becomes a consideration when you are trying to attach your either heatsink or AIO solution. You might have to fight around the height of your DIMMs then, in which case you would reverse the install order. You would install the RAM first and then put on your cooling solution if you are worried about the spacing. All right, so this is a standard DIMM. You can see there's no protection. There is no extra heat sinks on here. It is just raw chips. So let's take a look at the G-Skill and compare them. Now this really is going in Project 7, so I'm going to be much more careful in how I handle it. What does that mean? First and foremost, never touch those gold pins. The oils on your fingers will cause them to corrode. It will cause oil to be deposited on there, and it will interfere with the electrical connectivity that is supposed to occur. Those little deviations can impact the performance of the RAM itself and prevent you from really getting the higher speeds or the tighter timings that you might be desiring. Second, you can also accidentally rip off something on the surface mounted device, so it's best to hold this on the sides. Pretty much at all times, if you're holding it on the sides, you are going to be the safest. Inside the box, you can see this is a pretty standard box. Nothing really special about it. We have a little clamshell in here that actually shows the product that you're buying, and that's it. This is a PET material. This can provide some level of electrostatic protection, although it is not highly rated for electrostatic discharge, so that is one thing to be considered of, but for the most part, it won't really matter. We are going to open it. These tend to open either like a booklet or they just flop open like happened right there. Inside of here, we have a G-Skill registration and, of course, a sticker. If you want to install the stickers on your case, go right ahead. Nothing is stopping you. This is your system. On the memory itself, you will see the sticker that identifies what this RAM kit actually is. These two units are paired together. They get tested together. That is to ensure that the dual channel nature of RAM is basically stable, and that will work when both of these modules are installed. That gives you the best performance overall and the best overall stability. So you can see We have 3600, 16 on the cast latency, and then right below that, you can see all of the other fancy numbers. This is 36, 16, 16, 16, 36, 1.35 on the voltage. It does say that it is Intel XMP 2.0 ready, and then we have some serial information and the overall size, which is 8 gigs. So this is 8 gigs in this, 8 gigs in that one, so that will give us a total of 16 gigs. This does not have RGB, which helps reduce the overall price, but these tabs on the top, these can come off and can be replaced, which is kind of a cool little feature of these G.Skill. You want to help match the case. For Project 7, I would replace those with black if I were so concerned about the aesthetics. Okay, and again, we have 2 of these modules. So they are going to be identical. Now, if you look in between, oftentimes you can see that there are chips on the bottom and chips on the top, but that doesn't always tell you if it is dual ranked or single ranked. That doesn't always give you the information that you might think you can glean by physically looking at it. That's why it's very helpful to look up the part information itself in order to find out those pieces. Lastly, we see that this was manufactured in May 2021. That can come into effect as well because that tells you the revision number that could help us when it comes to actually overclocking and tightening the timings of this RAM. All right, let's get the case out and get this installed. Now the key here I am. Now the key item for when you install RAM is making sure that you are installing in the correct slots. This motherboard has 4 DIMM slots. That's 2 channel on one side and 2 channel on another side, but they are spaced out and separated, not next to each other. They are actually coded like this. So you have to make sure that you insert the correct DIMM in the correct slot when you're trying to pair it up. Luckily, on this board, it actually identifies exactly the pairs that need to be paired up first. In our case, we're installing 2 DIMMs, which means we need to put them into the primary slots, the A1 and the B1, in order to make sure that we have the best overall experience. In order to prepare, you can see I have pulled down these teeth right here. That is what clamps down on the side of the RAM and holds it in place should this case ever move. Or again, we're going to flip it like this, so there's going to be some gravity there that's pulling down as well. Those teeth will help everything stay in, and then when it's time to remove the RAM, when you push those teeth open, they'll actually lift a little bit on the RAM. That can help when it comes time to remove. So you can see I have the proper slots opened. Again, this is identified right on the motherboard, or you can find that in the manual if you need that information. We're going to line it up first and then gently push evenly on both sides. You don't want to push on the downside too much. You don't want to push the up. You don't want the left, the right. You want to push evenly smooth and down in one smooth motion. So I'm going to do the one that's closest to the power. So I'm going to do the one that's closest to the CPU. Between the two, it doesn't matter, honestly, but you could see I push down evenly. I do tend to use 2 hands when I am doing this. Now, this doesn't give you the trick of some fancy thing on one side and plain on the other, but if you think about it, they're likely not going to want that label shown. So that's also a way that you can tell. Once you have things lined up, you're going to hear that click. That click is the indication that this is properly installed. And honestly, that's it. When you turn on your system, you will see that the RAM itself will light up if you have RGB. And in this particular case, in a lot of more of the higher end motherboards, you're going to get a status indicator. The status indicator, or the Q code, is going to tell you what is happening. If it stays lit on RAM, you have a problem. Something has not been inserted properly, or the RAM itself is bad. Once we get this fully installed, we will be testing this RAM. It is critical that you test the RAM once you enable XMP to make sure you're getting the performance that you paid for. I'm a huge advocate of that, and I think it is critical that we as consumers always get what we thought we were paying for. So that's it. Our RAM is installed.